Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Meno Lounge. I'm Julie Gordon-White, CEO of MenoWell, Menopause, Energy, and Protein Bars. Can you tell I've already had one today? Lots of energy, all the good nutrition. Well, here we are in November. Where did Menopause Month go? I am still reeling. I still have pictures to share with you guys, all the fun things. October was just incredible, and one of the people I had the pleasure of meeting during all the flurry of the extra excitement about menopause was Melissa Ashley from Menopause Mandate US. And I'm going to bring her up right now, and we're going to have all these voices helping us all feel empowered with resources, with mindset, tools, etc. So here she comes. Hi there, Melissa. How are you?
Good, nice to see you.
You too. Have you recovered from all things Global Menopause Awareness Month yet? Or are you like me, like I'm still trying to dig
No,
myself out?
in fairness, to me, every month is Menopause Awareness Month. So yes, it was busy, but I'm still going strong. We got lots more coming up.
Yes, I know. That's the fun thing with, especially with the M Factor film, and just like the momentum. October is not enough to maintain or to contain the excitement and momentum of menopause and perimenopause empowerment for women and education, etc. And it is an all year, every day thing. I'm with you. That's a great answer for
Well,
that.
because I know I experience it all year, every
So,
day. So,
it's
right.
what we do, you and I, all the time. But so super fun right now. But let's talk. So you are now a part of Menopause Mandate US. So for people who don't know, so Menopause Mandate started in the UK, then it made its way here. Naomi Watts is is like the major spokesperson. Can you fill us in kind of about Menopause Mandate and how maybe UK and US are different or not?
Yeah,
Love to learn.
I'd love to. Thank you for asking. So Menopause Made UK has been around for years. It was founded by Mariella Frustrup, who's our fearless leader, and she's a huge advocate for menopause in the UK for many years. In fact, she did one of the very first documentaries back in 2018 on menopause. So we like to say she was ahead of her time. So she founded Menopause Mandate with my business partner in the UK, Laura Biggs, a couple of years ago. And over there, it's a really strong advocacy group. They've done a lot over there in the UK in terms of fighting for women's rights, especially when it comes to equal access to HRT and other things. They've also, they started out by collecting and sharing women's stories. We've published a book. And one of my favorite things that we do is we also host a free advice line for women. So we're not a telehealth platform, but when we get all of these stories and we get them in the US as well,
Mhm.
so many tell us that they've been dismissed by their doctors, they don't know what to do, they've been prescribed antidepressants. We all know the drill. What they can do is they can sign up for 15 minutes, so they can pick a time, they can pick a date, talk to a certified menopause nurse practitioner over in the UK and get some advice. And all of the advice leads to the British Menopause Society recommendations. So everything is evidence-based and fact-based. About a year ago, we launched in the US. Naomi Watts is our co-chair in the US along with Mariella, which we are quite grateful for. And our original goals were to provide evidence-based education, which we are doing through our website and through a lot of the events that we do, to collect and share women's stories, because there's so much in community and knowing that we're all in this same boat and that we're not crazy. Our doctors are pushing us to the side oftentimes, which is unfortunate, and telling us that, it's something that, is in our heads, or as Mary Claire Haver likes to talk about, whiny women. And we all know that that's now not the case. But it's important to feel like you're part of a tribe and that you're not sort of out there on your own.
Right.
And then most important is we're getting very close to launching the advice line in the US as well. And that's something I'm super, super excited about.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So is it handled? Is it womaned by a nurse practitioner or a lay person? How is that supported? The advice line.
So in the UK, they're called menopause nurse practitioners. In the US, we need to be a little bit more careful with medical advice versus how you label people. But everyone that will be staffing the advice line is a certified, qualified healthcare practitioner in some form, right? They're either we've had a few which I'm super excited about, is a couple of the top doctors in the space have offered to volunteer to staff the advice line. We have nurse practitioners. Everybody is very clearly qualified, educated, and certified. But because we are giving advice, we are not giving medical advice. We need to be all them.
Got it. I know it's a very fine, tricky line, right? I mean,
It's
even you and I being in this conversation all the time, when people are asking us things, I have to say, well, this is what I know, but disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. I only play one on Instagram.
Yep,
I don't even
I do
know
that
what
all the
I'm saying, but
I know. It's like, all right, let me share where I got this data from, because I'm not sure either. But we have, one of the reasons we exist is to provide evidence-based information to women. We think that there's a huge amount of value in all of the social media congregation that goes on, but unfortunately, a lot of that information is not always reliable. So it's really important, again, to be with your tribe, but it's also really important to know where you can go when you want to get evidence-based
yes,
facts. And that's really
yeah,
in the we exist.
really good, really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've also been doing some work. Actually, I'm going to circle back to that in a second too, because to hear more about the advice line and how you're going to expand here in the US, and this may tie together. But you're also doing work around menopause in the workplace and had a conference recently. So tell us about that, because I think that's so interesting. Companies are coming on board now, raising their hand, like, an ear, like, oh, we better pay attention to this.
Yeah.
I think the M Factor did a great job. And by the way, if you haven't seen M Factor film, go to PBS, find a screening near you.
It is fabulous. It's
It's
really
so well done. And I think I've seen it 3 or 4 times now, but I always see something different, or someone I know, like in one of the scenes, like, oh, I didn't see her before. It was kind of fun. But
great cast.
the important thing, though, on the corporate side is Genentech they had a really important interview in the piece where they surveyed their employees, and 45% of them were women in a stage of menopause. I hope I'm not fudging that statistic, but it's right around there, something very significant like that. And they figured, shoot, we better do something about this community, this population of our valued team members. Otherwise, we're going to lose women. And then, our costs, quite frankly, not to mention just culture wise and support, but the expense of replacing women who have many years of skills and expertise, leadership, is very expensive to replace. So, and those are just hard costs, not to mention the soft costs of what we bring to our careers. So I know you are leaning into this. So tell us about that.
Well, I want to touch on the expensive to replace first, really quickly, if I can. And we've all seen stats that have come out, right? We know that even before the Mayo Clinic did their research, Dr. Seibel out of Harvard had done his research a few years prior, right? And we know that when we don't support women in midlife, right, we lose about 1.8 billion in productivity as companies, right, on a U.S. basis. But more importantly is that number balloons to over 26 billion when you add in all the medical costs, right? So from a cost perspective, there's a cost for when it comes to productivity. There's a cost that you pay when it comes to a lack of diversity and inclusion, right? But the other thing we all need to think about is our demographics are aging in the U.S. as they are in a lot of other countries, right? So the other problem is there's a cost to not only trying to replace these women as we lose them, but also where do we find these replacements, right? Because your younger are shrinking, your older generations are aging, and if we don't support them in the right way, you're really gonna struggle not only just to replace who you've lost, but also you're gonna need to think about how you need to market differently to who your aging customer base is going to be. So that's one whole piece of the puzzle, which I think is a really interesting perspective. And at our event last week, we had Bradley Sherman, right, who's from the Human Change, and he's probably one of the foremost thought leaders on the topic of population and aging. But for anybody, and I hope there isn't anybody out there that's not thinking about this just from a moral perspective and a productivity perspective, if you think about it from an aging population perspective, go listen to what Bradley has to say, and I promise you'll treat your female employees a lot better. We have gone from menopause mandate, which is a consumer focused nonprofit, to looking at the B2B space, the business to business space, because we feel like there are so many organizations out there right now that are really embracing consumer education and trying to help women in the consumer space, which we think is wonderful. And we think we're a piece of that, but we don't
Hmm.
need to replicate what other great organizations are doing. And we really are concerned that as women become more knowledgeable and start to really learn that there are options available to them, that they don't hit another ceiling in the workplace by not getting any support, any insurance coverage, cultural change, what have you.
Right.
So we launched work summits a few years ago. We run them in New York, London, Seattle. We've been lucky enough to take it out to Davos. We've been to Cannes. Really trying to do what we can to create actionable insights for organizations so that they can learn from their peers that are doing really interesting things in their organizations and making a difference, how they can bring some of that back to their own companies. And that's
So important. Wow. You said Davos. That's like on my bucket list next time when you go
it,
back.
it it's a super cool place to go. I have to say, it was on my bucket list too. I never thought I was going to get there. And thanks to a great partnership with CNBC, we were able to get out there and start some of these conversations at a higher level, which is super exciting. But these conversations need to happen all across our country. And
Right.
I think that's a big part of, I'm circling back to the advice line now. You're going to love how I make this transition.
Okay, but can I just put in a pitch for San Francisco though? I mean, we need to put that on our list for 2025 because I didn't hear you say the West Coast. We need to do a little roadshow of this San Francisco, LA for
We
sure.
can look at that. We are in Seattle. We ran in Seattle this May, and we'll be back in Seattle next May. But we can also take a look
That's right.
at San.
Pacific Northwest. Come on
Well,
down. Right.
yeah, Northwest is great. We had a great show. I was circling back to Advice Line because I think it is so important. A big part of what we're trying to do is make sure that there's equitable access for everyone in the U.S.
Mm.
Um, you know the stats, and for people that are listening that may not know the stats, right? There's 6,000 women entering menopause each day, right?
Yeah.
One point, hold on, I wrote it down so I don't forget. I don't know where I wrote it, but there's, over 1.8 million per year that enter menopause. And that's across the country. There's only approximately 2,300 OBGYNs that have been certified in menopause medicine.
Right.
The
Right.
need to create this opportunity for more equitable access, which is part of why I'm so excited about the advice line, but also about bringing women and work across the country so that women that live in areas that don't have as much access, they may live 90 minutes away from their general practitioner and maybe 3 hours away from an OBGYN, and that OBGYN may not even be certified, right? So we want to make sure.
Or support their menopause journey, right? Not understand what options are
Exactly.
available. So,
Exactly. Yeah. So
mhm.
it's super important.
Wow. Well, that's the scalable part, right? That really the impact part, which is really, really important. And then having those in-person touchstones as well are really, really great. So we look forward to helping support you with that.
Yeah. And you guys, and by the way, MenoWell bars were very well received at our last event. Thank you. They're now my go-to when I need to quickly grab something to eat. But it is important that we all support each other. And that's why with both Women in Work and Menopause Mandate, as opposed to replicating what others are doing, we try to bring everybody along with us. And I think that's a superpower that women tend to have more so than men, being a little bit more inclusive and sharing as opposed to trying to own. So we always ask people, and people call us all the time, can you do so and so, can you help us with this, can you help us with that, can we partner on X or Y, and that's something that I think we're seeing across the board with all of these organizations that are really working to support women's health,
Yeah.
is we're all trying to.
We need to, right? I mean, it's going to be us, the women that are in these conversations that are impacted by it, to lift up the whole conversation for women who are also impacted but don't have, they're maybe they choose not to or don't know how or just prefer not to, be active and out loud about this. Some of us who have just decided it's our calling for whatever reason, we get to lift everybody up, and it's part of our purpose too. So that's why I loved when we connected, to be able to do this. And we need to have these things like a MenoWell bar or another product, or they're signals. I looked at them as not just a quality product, nutrition, whatever from that perspective for us. But I see our bars as a signal to a woman that she, cares about herself. She's worthy, she's valuable. And especially in the workplace where as we age, we all know Tamsin Fidel, right? Who was not being seen, who wasn't feeling good in her career after what, 20 something, maybe 30 years. And Tamsin is just one of millions of women that have stepped out of the workplace because they don't feel valued, seen, all of those things. They feel like they've hit a whole nother ceiling. And having products that signal to yourself, because sometimes, we have to start with ourselves. Like, I am valuable. I'm a badass. I can continue to do this thing. And maybe it's an opportunity to create your own path in the world, but you want it to be on your terms, not because somebody else made that decision for you. So
I agree.
I
I
just,
think what you said about, I always say, like, be proud and say it loud. And I think it also signals to people, hey, this is a life stage and I'm going through it, and screw you if you don't want to talk about it, because
exactly.
there's no other option here, right?
Right.
So I always like be proud, say it loud, and let's normalize the conversation, right? And
Totally.
being able to buy a MenoWell bar as opposed to a health bar, right? That normalizes the discussion, and that signals very clearly that, hey, this is where I am in life, and it's great,
Right.
right? And thanks for sharing to me.
I
That's what
love it. Thank you for that. And our perimenopause sisters, they're owning it, right? The Gen X, they're like, we don't care what you guys, you older women are thinking. We want
Yeah.
we want support, we want help. We're like, it's cool to be perimenopausal, quite frankly. It's actually not cool, it's hot, literally, but it's cool to own it, own the empowerment side of it. So I
It's
think
super.
they're really leading the way.
Is where you have all your major fluctuations and symptoms. So right, so it's really when you get to menopause, honestly, is a lot of doctors will talk about, you get to menopause and you're kind of, most of us are past a lot of those tougher symptoms, some of us not so much,
Or we're
but
used to it. We're just
right, we're a nerd, right? We'll just say we're a nerd. Or we've been smart enough to get the support that we need, right? And I think that's the key right now, is making
or
sure women realize.
courageous enough, I would say, because it takes courage to go against a doctor that may not.
Right, willing to go to 10 different doctors, what have you, whatever it is, we don't want the next generation to have to go through that.
Yeah.
You know, they need to know, hey, just like when my daughter first gets her period, she knows what to expect, she knows what it's going to be like, and she knows the different products and services available to help her.
Right.
Menopause. And by the way, we're going to live in menopause for a third of our lives if we're lucky.
Right.
Time
That's
to
the
thrive.
goal.
Time to thrive, right? We got to
Right.
thrive. That is
And
the
share it. And my daughter knows everything about menopause, and my sons too, more than they ever wanted to know, but that's how it goes.
I'm sure get there will greatly appreciate it, as will their daughters.
That's for sure. And their friends, right? So question, if you don't mind sharing, which I don't think you do, tell us a little bit about your own menopause journey. Was it easy, simple? Were you able to get support? Did you suck it up and suffer through? What was your experience, or is?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share. It's part of why I'm here today. So my experience was not good. I joke, I'm a statistic. I was a fertility statistic. It took me, the 3 point whatever years to have my daughter. I was a menopause statistic. I struggled for years, literally trying to figure out, as I like to say, what the hell is wrong with me, right? Because I was a business executive. I had a pretty high-powered role, and all of a sudden, I found myself carrying, I'll use an old-fashioned term, my books on my back to every meeting I went, because I was petrified that I wasn't going to remember a number, a stat, a P&L, what have you.
Right.
And I was a different person, and I kept going to my doctor, and I loved my gynecologist. She's a wonderful woman, and I kept saying to her, what is wrong with me, what is wrong with me, right? And she kept telling me there was nothing wrong with me, and maybe I should try the pill, and I can't take the pill for whatever reason. So it took me a couple of years before I found out that within that practice there was a doctor who specialized in menopause.
But isn't that, let's just pause there for a second. Isn't that amazing? And unfortunately, not uncommon. There's one doctor that gets it, knows it, but the other doctors don't know it. Another doctor, a general doctor in the same practice, doesn't understand menopause, let alone a specialist around heart disease or some other more specialized piece of this. They need to know too, because it all impacts every single organ system in our body. And so here you are in your own medical practice with a specialist, and your doctor didn't know about
Well,
it.
but here's the interesting thing about it is, so again, I happen to love this doctor, and she and I are similar ages, and we both had children later. So she was still, I had a young child. Not, I mean, my child was a little bit older than hers, but she had three young children. So I don't think it ever occurred to her, and I don't think she was ever trained in it. And honestly,
Right.
business partner Laura Biggs is how I got here, because I was working with her on some things that she was doing in the fertility space, and then she started doing stuff in the menopause space, and I was like, wait a minute, right? Like light bulb.
Like,
Because I was one of those incredible fluctuators, right? So it's really my perimenopause that's been driving me nuts. And I was like, light bulb, let me find out if there's anybody that's special. And lo and behold, brilliant doctor. And I'm not crazy, well, maybe I am a little crazy, but not as crazy as I thought it was.
crazy, yeah.
I got some help. And that's what got me to say, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, Laura, what is going on? Like how is the UK, no offense to the UK, so much further ahead than the US in recognizing this issue and solving for this issue and in talking about this issue? We got to bring this over to the US. And this was a couple of years ago. And so I started with a product called MenoChannel, which is still run today. I researched and started interviewing all the top doctors in the menopause field, right? Yeah. So these are all highly, highly educated, certified, menopause society, blah, 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 research, etc. And I started interviewing them. And it took a little bit for them to want to be interviewed by me. But once I started, it was fascinating. And they're free for women to listen to. If they're live, women can ask questions. And that sort of got the ball rolling, because the more I learned, the more I realized that something needs to be done. And I guess I hit it a little bit as things were starting to build, although I'm still at this very much at the starting gate when it comes to women's health and
I would say
gender equity.
We're still tip of the iceberg here.
But I just was like, I can't let other people go through this. And then I started learning what other people are going through, and I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. Hence, we launched the Women in Work Summits, and we launched, I brought Menopause Mandate over to the US because I just felt like we needed to do something. But
really important.
And the woman I talked to has their story.
Mm-hmm.
And my dream is that the next generation does not have a story. They need to have a story. Right. That's what we're all doing right now.
Definitely not the story that we have, right? So
yeah, and I mean, it should. Listen, do you have a story when you get your period? No, and there's no story. Yeah, you just work through it.
It's a fact. It happened. Like, okay, and the story is like, oh, it started in some place I didn't know and wanted to. But oh my God, TMI. But I gave my daughter a period pack that she carried around in her backpack, so she would always be prepared to not have to have a big dramatic story. But then I was sad because when she started, she didn't tell me. I'm like, oh, I had the story. She didn't have the story. I had the story.
You know what? That's how it should be. That's wonderful. I mean, I understand that feeling, but the fact that there was no stigma, no shame, no embarrassment, no concern, I mean, is wonderful, because it's just natural. And that's the other thing is, this is not a disability. Just like having a baby is not a disability. The fact that we go on disability leave is just horrifying, right? We're the only, one of 38 countries that doesn't have a paid maternity leave or any sort of paternity leave that's legally required. Right. Like, these things have to change. And I think by all of us getting together and chipping away at it, they will, because it's just super important, which is why Women in Work is a little bit more than menopause, because employers need more than single points of contact. They need the bigger context, right? And they need to be thinking about the whole woman, not just a piece of the woman. Right. So that's why
good. So good, so important. Let's just circle back to the UK really quickly as we kind of pull this together. And why is, from your perspective, now that you brought Menopause Mandate from the UK to US, why is the UK so far ahead? Is it because of how their medical system works, or is it cultural? What is your observation?
So this is strictly my observation because I'm really not there to really be able to comment. I think it's a few things that I've sort of looked at over the years. First of all, it's a much smaller space to try and aggregate on.
Yeah.
Number two, government. Carolyn Harris, who's she's the PM, and I'm going to butcher her title, but she has a role in women's health and government, which is amazing. Mariela Frostrup, who I mentioned, who's our chair, was just named. We call her the menopause czar, but the government just named her as the menopause education.
The
It's not
government named her.
government
That's
just
just
named her to.
amazing all by itself.
Yeah. So number one is you've got women and men in government that are paying attention to this. Number two is their, with their healthcare system. One of the things that Menopause Mandate did over there was really lobby for single pricing for HRT for women. And we were able, part of the group that was able to get that through. You can't do something like that in the States, right?
Not how we work. Yeah.
And I just think that there's been a lot, there have been more people early on, like a Mariella Frostrup, like a Davina McCall, like a Penny Lancaster, that are willing to put their name to this. I remember talking to editor-in-chief of Oprah Daily, who told me that she told me this about a year ago now, so really about 15, 20 years ago, when Oprah was going through some of this, she could not get a single, not one celebrity to come on her show and talk about menopause. All those celebrities have now aged and they're all experiencing menopause. Look at Naomi Watts, look at Juliana Margulies, look at Drew Barrymore, like Halle Berry. Like they're all like, well, wait a minute, why should this be happening to me? And they're now willing to talk about it. It
Right.
took a long time to get there.
Right.
I
Right.
think they were a little bit more open about it and they had a little less ground to cover.
And maybe in the UK, there's less age discrimination. I don't know. I'm making that up. Maybe you would notice that than there is in the US, and especially in Hollywood. I mean, my goodness, that's a whole other thing. But I just wonder, we're so age obsessed, youth obsessed, I should say, in the US.
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I mean, it's possible. I kind of feel like, I don't know, I haven't been anywhere where I've met women that really want to acknowledge their age, but that whole rationale for why I think needs to change, and I think that's what's happening.
Yeah. Really interesting. Well, I'm grateful for the UK of opening this door and helping normalize it so we can normalize it here, feel good about ourselves, get empowered, get educated, which is probably the most important thing, because empowerment comes from education. It's hard to feel empowered when you don't know what the heck is going on, and even worse, feel like, as we've heard over and over, like, am I going crazy or not? So
it's also, I think, a lot of women, because we receive so many emails and letters and we get so many stories, you need to take agency over your body, but you also need to have a level of confidence that can be
right.
really hard if you don't have a medical degree. Like when you're in a doctor's office, right, and they're the expert, there's a sense of vulnerability, a word I've never been able to say. And I think that what women need to do is they need to feel more confident in being able to advocate for themselves. And frankly, I mentioned I've interviewed over 50 doctors. I would guess that almost every single one to a T has given me the same advice at some point on the call. If your doctor's not listening to you, if your doctor's turning you away, if your doctor's making you feel uncomfortable, find another doctor.
Right. They're not your person. I would say, success is a team sport. So you need to have more than one person on your success team. And it's no disrespect, because I think a lot of women struggle with that. The doctor that delivered their babies, maybe, or the doctor they've been with for 30 years, all of a sudden not being able to help them with this one thing. So it's okay to add on to the team.
Yeah,
So
and it's okay to say, no, I disagree and I'm going to go elsewhere. Right.
But if you don't know to say that, or as here the Stronger Collective is asking, how do we create the confidence for women? I've told women, tell me what you think about this, besides, going to a vetted website like yours and, Menopause Society, etc. go prepared. There's tools to download, or grab one of these great menopause books, that are out that a doctor wrote, the OG, the Estrogen Matters, or Mary Claire's book, or Sharon Malone's book. I'm gonna miss, I'm just gonna stop naming doctors because there's so many good
Like,
books now. I'm gonna miss one,
but
Heather Hirsch,
yep, they're all
Dr. Suzanne Ellen, I mean, on Menopause
yep.
Boot Camp, there's so many great books beyond what I just said. So get those, bookmark them, highlight what you need, and take them in. I've taken books into my doctor, and all the things I know, right? And she's like, well, I don't know. I asked her, like, oh my God, here we go. Like Peter Attia's book on longevity. This is my question right here about the heart. Oh, I said, here, I'm giving this to you. Please, I would like your thoughts on this.
Well, but
And like you, I love my doctor, but they can't know everything, and they can't know everything and share it in a 10-minute appointment. That's the other issue.
Well, I think
So
that's the other piece of advice that a lot of doctors give is if you really do want to go talk to your doctor about menopause, don't do it at your 7-minute wellness checkup,
right,
right? Make a separate appointment so that they know what you're coming in for, right? Make a sick visit, a wellness visit, whatever it is. But yes, do your research. Yes, do your backing. But to your point, Julie, make sure that it's from a doctor. Don't just go online and say, hey, my doctor said this, what do you think? Or I'm looking for this, who's taking what? Because you don't do that with any other health issue within your body. You
right.
shouldn't do it with cause. So I love that you're mentioning all of these great books that are written by doctors that are really qualified to share a lot of that great information.
Yeah. And we can get empowerment and confidence starting by reading those books, because we're not walking around being at the mercy, if you will, of our medical system, which is not set up to support us. And even for the doctors, they won't have enough time to tell you in a regular appointment. You have to just know ahead of time. You have to set a separate appointment, like you're saying, so you're not disappointed when you're trying to cram all these things into a 7-minute appointment. It just don't,
It's just
we're all set up for disappointment that way. So
it's just not feasible.
no,
Unfortunately, our
doesn't work.
medical system doesn't work. And that's also probably another reason why I think in the UK, they're much more ahead of us because they don't have the 7-minute appointment, right? They're not dealing with an insurance company.
Right,
So a bit more time to have those conversations.
right. About the good and the bad, right, of
Yeah.
those structures.
You got to balance
So
it all.
Melissa, any tips you have for women just through your journey, through your experience, through all the interviews that you've done that you might want to share as we wrap up today?
Sure. I think the first one I would always say is listen to your body. Don't listen to what someone else is telling you, right? If you think something's wrong, if you think something's not how you used to be, if you don't feel the way you did, no matter
Yeah.
how old, listen to your body and find a doctor that's willing to work with you, right? In the interest of TMI, I years ago had a very odd disease and I had to really advocate for myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because I knew my body. So I
Mm-hmm.
listen to your body, be comfortable talking about it, find your tribe, right? Once you read some of these books, once you go on some of these platforms, you will realize that you are not alone. And once you realize that you're not alone, it'll probably give you a little bit more confidence to get out there and set up that appointment and find your doctor.
Yeah.
When setting that appointment up, if you are going to talk to your doctor, do a little research. Find out if they are a certified menopause practitioner. Um, and if they're not, that's okay if they've had menopause training, but there's no reason not to ask.
Yeah.
Just like that is there was actually one person in my practice that actually has extensive training in
Right.
menopause, and my
Right.
doctor was delighted to have me see her for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So my best advice is advocate for yourself, seek evidence-based information, right? And if you learn about things that friends are doing, I think that's awesome. I think there's such value in that tribal community, but talk to your doctor about it.
Yeah. Good point. Because we are all different, and we know the core symptoms, but we still have very independent experiences, very different, even if there's some overlap. So
There are no two similar cases, I shouldn't say cases, examples of women and how they experience
right.
menopause. And everybody also has their own individual contraindications, sensitivities to medications,
Huge
concerns and anxiety,
point.
right?
Huge point.
So they should all be acknowledged and addressed by clinical provider. And that's probably one of my biggest points. It drives me crazy seeing people say, hey, my doctor said I should take this much HRT. What do you think? Like, that's not how HRT works. It's just, don't
That's like a 2 steps below Dr. Google,
right.
you know? No.
That's how it works. I'm sorry. Like, so
It is
that was
interesting to find out, you know, what someone else started at and how they progressed, what was their experience, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't verify it with your own doctor. So,
exactly. It's great to be in like company, but only
right.
so far.
So good. Okay. Hey, last question. MenoWell. You know, when we created the bar, we really listened to our customers. You know, what is important to you? And at the end of the day, when we culled it all down, they just wanted a menopause well. So, what do you think MenoWell means?
So to me, MenoWell is figuring out, and it's going to sound horrible, but your psychosocial, right, medical, like what is it that makes your body tick and makes you feel good, right? And for me, with MenoWell, it's like a broken record. It's knowing that I'm eating relatively cleanly, knowing that I can pick something up like a MenoWell bar, like an egg, things that are a little bit more natural, things that are healthy for my body. Knowing the type of exercise that's best for me, that not only keeps my body healthy as I age, but also helps my brain,
Yes.
because that's a big. So MenoWell to me is doing what you as an individual need to do to feel good about yourself in a day-to-day basis and to do your best. I read something recently that Dr. Mary Claire Haver said. She's like, listen, I'm not exercising to try and fit into a bikini. I'm exercising so that I still feel good when I'm 80. Right. And that
Right.
it's making sure that I can age and I can thrive and I can grow gracefully.
I love it. And that's not, you said it's going to sound bad or ugly or whatever. That's amazing. That's amazing. All the things all into one.
Well,
Beautiful.
thank you.
So, how do people find out about Menopause Mandate US and Meno Channel if you're still active there? Tell us where to find more of all of your Melissa Ashley Menopause Mandate goodness in the US.
Thank you for asking. So you can go to menopausemandateus.com to see the US website. There's a lot of great resources on there. You'll also, as soon as the advice line launches, which we're hopefully going to be announcing very soon, our sponsors, so that we can launch it hopefully before the end of the year. You'll learn about it there. And then we're also on social media, right? So you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on LinkedIn. Same with Meno Channel. You can just go to menochannel.com. You can see all of the doctors that we have interviewed, and you can always access any of those interviews for free. We do always ask for a small contribution, but you can always just get a free ticket. And you can also see what's coming up live. I actually have a live one tonight with the new head of women's health at Northwell Health, talking about heart health. So you can always go to menochannel.com or follow us on Instagram at menochannel.us. And same with Menopause Mandate US. So please, and if there's something that we can provide for you or that you're looking for, you can always reach out to us via either of those channels, and we're happy to try and find it or provide it for you.
Awesome. Really good. I don't think we can have too many resources, because just like a menopausal experience, it's not one thing fit all, right? One size fit all, one experience, one channel, one resource fit all. So there's a place for everybody, because everybody needs to find the thing that works for them. So I love that you're providing this resource, and I'm excited about the advice line that's going to be happening in the US soon. So stay tuned. You'll have to come back on when that's available so we can talk about it.
I will. I would be delighted to. And also, when you go to like Menopause Mandate, it takes you to all the other great resources that are out there. So anybody that wants to go visit Menopause Society or wants to see the Standards Institute's menstruation and menopause policies, we do link to everybody else. So we're more than happy to spread the wealth around.
Really good. I love that. It takes all of us. So
it takes a
thank you for coming on.
Thanks for
sharing all the goodness.
See you.
Excellent to see you, and I look forward to having Women at Work in San Francisco. I'm going to keep bugging you about that. I'm just giving you a heads up right now.
We'll talk about that separately. But thank you so much for having me, Julie. It was great to see you.
Thank you so much for being here, Melissa, at Menopause Mandate US on Instagram. Hunt her down, follow, share. Thanks, everybody. Be well. See you next time on the Meno Lounge. Take care.